What'd you think of the season finale of Game of Thrones?
Right?
Oh, no. I'm reading the books.
There's not much worse in the world of entertainment than spoilers. When we're looking forward to a movie or book, we tend to avoid certain bits of information about them, like the plague. Studies have been done that claim that there's no actual loss to our enjoyment from spoilers, but those studies were actually wrong. Because, like we all know naturally, spoilers suck. But what we might not know is exactly why they suck. There's some bits of information about a story that don't cause a problem if we know them. And in fact, certain details are necessary to make us want to watch the movie. But in other cases, just a single sentence, giving a certain bit of info, can destroy the whole experience. I've never been able to watch certain movies in the way the original audiences could, because they were so popular that we hear about the endings before we ever get to see them. And I've always been a little ticked off about it. So what really is going on in our heads when we hear spoilers? And how does that affect the experience of watching movies? Let's talk about that right now. The first thing to know, I think, is that the process of watching a movie or reading a story is not just a single experience. There are several reactions and changes that happen in our mind, several types of emotional experience that we go through, that, if they happen correctly, give us a good time. And the first of those occurs in what a lot of people call the first act of the movie. This is the part where the movie has to convince us to care about what we're seeing. We're introduced to the characters, we're given reasons to believe the world we're seeing, and things happen to set up a situation where we want to watch more. These are usually things that trigger our curiosity, like mysteries or questions, or make us anticipate something that would be pleasurable to see. Like a person we care about achieving a goal, a bad person being punished, a threat that causes us to feel excitement, and so on. This is all the information that it's okay for us to know from the beginning. I've never been upset by being told something beforehand that happens in the first act, like the name of the character or the concept or basic idea of the plot. I've never seen Creed, for example, but I know that Apollo Creed's son trains with Rocky and starts boxing himself. None of this is a problem, and in fact, it can be a help, because movies often have to work to get our interest. Switching from thinking about what you normally want to thinking about the plot of the film very often isn't really a fun thing. And in fact, when I was younger, I would actually just skip the first 50 pages of any book I would read, and I'd try to figure out the early part as I went. So in this case, things that speed up that process, those plot details, don't affect the experience of watching the movie or reading the book. And if they're interesting details, they can actually help. There's a big difference though when we get past that part of the movie. Once we have a reason to watch and care, the story then shifts to using that interest to entertain us. It does this by progressing the situation, revealing bits of the answer, having the goal get closer, having the threat grow, and so on. Each time it does this, it refreshes our interest. But to do so, we have to not know the next step. This is because our emotions are actually generated as we notice new things. Those new things make new connections in our mind or underline existing connections, making something more likely to happen, a bigger threat, and so on. And our brain updates our feelings in order to make us pay more attention to the thing that is closer to happening or more important. If we know beforehand that an event will occur, we can't make that new connection while we're watching, and the emotion can't be generated the same way. And beyond even that, those feelings depend on what other connections already exist in our minds. So if I'm in my bed at night and I hear a bump, I immediately connect that bump to the possibility of someone breaking into the house. I can then connect that to me being alone and unarmed, and all those new connections generate fear or adrenaline and interest in me in paying more attention. But another thing to keep in mind is that all of that depends also on those other parts of the situation. Not just the sound, but where I am, when it is, and so on, which is part of how likely it is to be dangerous to me, and other things. This means that when you hear a spoiler, some bit of important information about the movie, not only can you not feel the thing properly when you watch it, you also don't even get the pleasure at the time you hear the spoiler.
Why does it upset you that I told you how the book ends?
It pisses me off.
The pieces aren't in place, and because you need those pieces to be there when the connection is made, you can never know how you would have felt if you had watched the movie normally. It's like trying to open a combination lock when you only know one of the numbers. You can never have that new connection be formed when you are in the right state of mind. The best you can do is guess, and you'll never know for sure. On top of that, the whole process of anticipating what's going to happen gets shut down too. Of course, if it's a mystery movie, you never know if you would have figured it out yourself beforehand. But it's even worse than that. Because sometimes people will get cute and try to give you a fake spoiler, tell you something is going to happen that actually doesn't. And of course they think it's harmless, but it's actually not. And I'm sure we all know that. Because when you feel like you already know where something's going, you never get the reason to pay attention to it in the first place. And when you find out that that wasn't the ending, that is in fact a surprise, but surprise is only a limited pleasure. It's a temporary shot of excitement to get you ready to react to something new. That is nowhere near as powerful as the sustained interest you feel when you see a story play out without knowing where it's going. Now, I've heard people give other justifications for spoilers also. Like, for example, that anything that can be destroyed by the truth should be.
What?
This is one of those phrases that sounds poetic or clever, but really is way off. Because in this case, learning the ending of a story is not like finding out the truth. It's like finding out the future. When we watch or read a story, we're placed into a state of real-time learning, where we're not supposed to know what's going to happen, and we feel all the pleasures associated with watching things unfold. So what we feel about movie spoilers is exactly correct. They definitely do hurt or even ruin the experience of watching a movie or reading a book. So don't believe anybody who tells you otherwise, and don't read them unless you have no intent of ever watching the thing in question. And if you need to Google or look up something popular and you're worried, have a friend who doesn't care about it check first. And always be careful, because sometimes in life, ignorance really is bliss. That's it for now, but before we go, a special Patreon announcement. Head over to the page, because I put up my YouTube Space Q&A, the one I did in person. And if you think that might be interesting, you can sign up now and see it yourself. But whoever you are, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.